I thought we would try to utilize the time as best we can this evening, so we'll continue on because there's a lot of material that I'm trying to just overview basically what's going to be covered this weekend in much more in depth. The other area that I would encourage you to look at is essential oils. You don't walk down here to the health food store and buy an essential oil. All you do is get the smell. Now, the two quick stories that I'll tell you about essential oils is, number one, when the wise men visited the Christ child, they brought the most precious gift they could think of. What was it? Frankincense and myrrh, essential oils. When they opened King Tut's tomb, they found several gallons sitting in there of essential oils. And some of the scientists who were involved in that project got interested as to whether or not the oils, after the several thousands of years they had been there, maintained their constituents. They did. Think about that. That's incredible. And the last little tidbit that I'll leave you with is that the Black Plague of the 1700s, the royal family, and this is still in the archives of the royal family in England, survived the Black Plague. Guess how? Essential oils. But here's the way it was done, is that there was a family of people going out through the dead bodies, taking the money and the jewelry and all the goodies from them. And the king found out about it and sent his troops out there and picked them up, brought them in there and threatened to torture them unless they said told them what they were doing. They were using essential oils. It was an old family of apothecaries that had maintained the knowledge of essential oils and was simply rubbing essential oils on their body and could go out there and not pick up the Black Plague. So the royal family did not get the Black Plague, and that's how they survived. Now, after the Black Plague was over, the historians looked back on this and they found that there was a town in England called Hucklesbury, that nobody in that town got the Black Plague. And they go, how did this happen? Well, that little town, it was actually a rather large town, produced the essential oil lavender. And that obviously created an aura of energy around that entire city, where nobody in that city got the Black Plague. Now, there's some tidbits for you to think about. Essential oils need to be studied, and you don't buy essential oils unless they are therapeutic grade. Remember that. Therapeutic grade. Yes?
So that's my question. When you say don't go to the health food store to buy it, is that because most health food stores don't have therapeutic grade?
They don't have therapeutic grade. If they do, then they will have it out there as a means by which you can check and see whether or not it's therapeutic grade. You're going to pay more for them, but boy, I'm telling you, the essential oils were the first medicine, and it's going to probably be the last medicine. Because after all, all pharmacology does is an attempt to duplicate what nature has already provided for us. Because they can't patent what comes from nature, but they can patent a synthetic. What do you want in your body? Anything you put on your skin goes into the body. Now we can stimulate the pituitary. You can put essential oil on the ears, for example. It takes 3 seconds to get to the pituitary gland. They've measured this already. It's really quite amazing. All right, so much for that. The healing process that has evolved out of this research I've been doing now for many years has determined that individuals retain residues from past experience. Now, we define residue as anything within the nature that is causing dis-ease or discomfort within the internal nature. Now, I went back and looked at many of the scientific studies that were done on cancer, for example, back during the 1920s and 1930s. And the reason I did that is because I believe that during that period of time, the research held a great deal more integrity than the research we're presently experiencing. It seems that the consciousness of the people, the scientists and individuals who were looking at this, had more integrity associated with their research than the individuals we have presently in our day, and there's exceptions to the rule. But remember that these organizations and individuals are vying for literally millions of dollars to continue the research. But are they finding cause? You know, and I attend as many scientific conferences as I can, and I'm limited on that basis. I wished I wasn't, but I'd like to go to all of them. But it was just a couple of years ago that there was an individual got up at a scientific conference and he talked about the fact that they had just been funded with $300 million from some organization in England to do research in alternative healing. And he named off all of the areas that they were going to research. And they were going to build 2 clinics in America, I think one here in Canada. They were going to build a couple in Australia, several throughout Europe. They were going to go into Africa and build a couple down there. And these are going to be research as well as healing clinics using alternative methods. And I get rather bodacious when I hear this sort of thing, because I'm interested in what caused these diseases. I'm very interested in that. And so I got up in front of this group of scientists and I said, I heard this wonderful presentation and this incredible amount of money, $300 million, a lot of money. And I heard about the research that was going to be done. But it looks to me like that they're going to duplicate what's already been done. I didn't hear anything about looking for what's causing these diseases. If we find cause, we're definitely going to be able to correct them. So remember the little scenario that I gave to you in this young man that walked into my office and asked me if he could be helped with this condition in his lungs where he'd been pronounced dead twice from asthmatic attack. And all I did was give him the suggestion to go as far back as he needed to go to what caused this condition in his lungs. Cause. It's a wonderful thing to look for, because you find the cause, it's over. And I'm here to tell you that the cause of disease, with the exception of the invasion of some bacteria and that sort of thing, but all the diseases are coming from our past. And I'm also here to tell you that basically you don't have a future unless you heal your past, because you will repeat the same mistakes, the same things over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. You see, we are creatures of habit, and we tend not to change too quickly. I'm here to encourage you to make some changes, but do it gently, but make them. Begin to look within your nature what it is that's causing disturbance. Now, there are several people here that want to study this process, that have been involved in the study of this process now for several months. These people can help you look for cause. But here's what you're going to find in looking for cause. You're going to find tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after tragedy in past lives coming to the foreground, presenting themselves as disease in our present circumstance. I maintain, and I maintain this in front of the scientific community, that all disease comes from our past, is hidden in the memory, and something as subtle as a smell, a sound, a taste, the presence of someone can cause the uprush of that memory, and that individual is faced with some debilitating problems. How many of you here have ever known someone that saved for an entire lifetime to take that wonderful trip to Europe? They come back and go to the hospital because they pulled up some memory that went on over there in some past life, not knowing that that's what happened, but pulled up a memory that now has caused them to be hospitalized and probably causes their demise. Because how many people in this part of the world even believe in past lives? They're still on the fence, and many of them are rejecting it. But I'll tell you this, if you do your research carefully, you'll find that in any major university you can find that Constantine the Great and his mother Helena removed all reference from both the Old and New Testament of re-embodiment and reincarnation. And that was confirmed by the Second Council of Constantinople in 538 AD. Why? Because the bureaucrats, the people in authority and in control, saw the power of the church coming to the foreground, and they didn't want to give people forever to work out their salvation. They wanted to give them only one lifetime so that the church could hold on to them. Now, I would hate to think what our planet would be like without traditional religion, teaching some kind of moral behavior. But also, traditional religion has not done any favors of teaching the truth on this planet. The truth is, you've lived many lifetimes. You're the product of your past. And whatever you hold within your nature that is unique or different, or phobic, or compulsive, or causing cancer, or causing whatever, you need to look at it and fix it and heal it so you can leave this lifetime free of that stuff, because you're in a time period now in which these matters can be dealt with. We haven't known how to do this until just recent years. We do now. And I am being as vocal as I possibly can, and hopefully won't attract too many lawsuits. I've been through that. I've done that. Don't want to do that anymore. The AMA got after me in the States. I came out unscathed. I'll tell you what happened. Is that I was doing some counseling in a private school with children, and if I could do nothing more, I would work strictly with children. But that's not possible in the culture we have now, both here in Canada or in the States. And I was sitting in the office of the administrator, and one of the teachers come running in and said, "Did you see Mrs. Smith's son? She's going to take him to the hospital today to get a colostomy." I went, "What? How old is the child?" She said, 5. Well, the doctors had diagnosed this child as being born without a sphincter muscle, couldn't have a bowel movement. They had to give him an enema practically every day so he could have release and have a bowel movement. I said, "Sure, I'll see him." So she went running back out, came back in. She was driving out of the parking lot. She's gone. She's gone to the hospital. Well, I thought about that child all week. Here's a little 5-year-old boy that's going to have to wear a bag out of his side to go potty for the rest of his life. And so the next week when I was down there, the same teacher came in and said, "You know, the doctors got busy and they postponed that operation. She's here. Would you see the child?" I said, "Sure." So she brought the child in, and I asked her, I said, "Have you taught this child his colors?" Because he was only 5 years old. He said, "Yeah, he knows his colors." Well, I worked with that child for less than 10 minutes, probably 7, 8 minutes at the most, and he looked up at his mother and said, "I got a tummy ache." She said, "What's the matter?" He said, "I got to go poo-poo." She took him in the bathroom. He had his first bowel movement, and they've been natural ever since. Well, when the lawyers looked at this and they looked back at that experience, you know, people were claiming it was a miracle, and I said, "Don't ever claim that. There are no miracles. There just are no miracles, period." It was a wonderful thing to be an instrument for that kind of healing, but it's not a miracle. What I found was an infestation of spirits that were attached to this child, and it was blocking his ability to move. He did have a sphincter muscle. So I get hit with a lawsuit from the doctor that was going to do the operation. He didn't get his $30,000. But we came out okay. But it's not comfortable to go through that kind of mess. Lawyers are, there's some good ones, but where are they? Can you point to one? So again, reiterating, these residues that are producing this disease factor within the internal nature basically is what's causing disease in the culture, by and large. And the process that has evolved out of this research has been to be able to track the symptom through the memory back into the experience, be it in this lifetime or past lifetime. Identify it, and there's the key. Once it's identified, then the individual's own mind becomes their healer. They release it. It's really incredible to watch this. When you have an individual in the memory of a tragedy, think about this for just a moment. especially you females. Take an example of someone who's been raped and murdered in a past life. Now they're not going to be too happy about that, are they? And what's going to happen to the spirit of the individual who's been raped and murdered? Do you think that's going to cause a little anger? Yep. You think they're going to be immediately forgiving? Nope. And so I'm going to share with you something that I have concluded from many years of doing this work. How rampant do you think impotence is in our cultures throughout this part of the world?
Really rampant.
It's really rampant. Now, what we have found that is one factor associated with this syndrome, I guess we could call it a syndrome because it's everywhere, is that we have found that the female who was raped and murdered wanted revenge. But she also wanted something more important. She wanted to take the energy from this male so he would never do that to anyone else. And in a rage, which is a powerful energy, took the sexual energy of that male. Now, how do you think that could happen? I'm telling you, it has been happening all down through history. When Jesus said, "When you learn the truth, you shall become whole," what does that mean? Does it mean that I'm in this physical body and I'm really not whole? Individuals have fragmented. This is the only term we have to describe this, and I accidentally discovered this years ago when I got into an experimentation with a group of sensitives in which I was very curious as to whether or not they could see the silver cord that attaches the spirit into the body in a death experience when their spirit was leaving the body in that death experience in that past life. Every one of them could perceive it and describe it. But they said, well, I've got another cord coming out of my side, and I've got another one coming out of my head, and I've got one coming out of my back. And I'd go home and I'd go, now what could those cords possibly be? So as I began to experiment with that and have them trace those cords, we found that those cords went to several factors. And I think in all I found maybe 7 areas that these cords go to. Now those of you who are familiar with cords, hear this. Don't ever cut or sever a cord, and do not ever allow a healer, shaman, or otherwise to sever or cut a cord with you. Please hear that. And there's a reason for it, of which I'm going to describe to you in just a moment. When you think about what psychology has called symbiosis, the bonding that links mother to child, many mothers have had such a strong bond with their children that they can tell where that child is emotionally at all times. The phone rings, they go, oh, that's Johnny. Hi, Johnny. Or the mother senses something's wrong with the child and she runs into the bedroom and catches that child just before he falls out of the crib. Saves that child from a tragedy. There's a symbiotic link between mother and child. That's a cord. But there's other cords as well that link you to many other factors relative to your past, relative to your present, and relative to your future. These fragments, where individuals have fragmented because of pain, tragedy, trauma, and pleasure. People have gotten into pleasurable experiences to the extent that they want to leave part of themselves there so they can find their way back into the pleasure. They fragment. Now, When we consider schizophrenia, severe schizophrenia. Hello, are you home? No one there. Where are you? There's no one home. That's severe fragmentation of the spirit and soul. They're not whole. This is really what Jesus meant. When you learn the truth, you shall become whole. There is a way to track and trace these fragments, heal the condition that caused it, and then integrate that fragment. If you want to look at dramatics relative to spiritual healing, there is one. There's where dramatics really occur in spiritual healing. It's really amazing. And I just accidentally fell into it. But I was curious, what could those chords possibly be? Here's where they go, in the way that I have ascertained so far. There's probably more. I'm not an authority on this. But I'm here to tell you and to warn you, don't ever allow someone to cut a cord. And don't you ever cut a cord, because these cords will dissipate of themselves once the condition has been brought to resolution. The symbiotic cord is the first one you'll find. That connects the mother to child, father to child. Close bonds. Any of you here have a close friend? Any of you have at least one? Oh, somebody over here's got one. There's a cord that bonds you. It's a bonding cord. Close friendships. They're wonderful, aren't they? When you think of someone, what do you think that energy travels on? It's an etheric thread that links you to that person. If your thoughts are strong and powerful, you're going to influence that person. As we talked about earlier, just briefly, directing energy to them. Karmic cords. All of you here understand the word karma? Any of you not understand the word karma? Karma is simply the law of cause and effect. For every action, there's a reaction. Karma is not punishment for bad deeds. It's simply to bring your consciousness into an understanding to be a good little boy or a good little girl. That's all. The universe is designed in a way to bring you into the experience that's going to actually help you to unfold an understanding of the eternal verities of what's good, what's just, what's beautiful, what's loving. So your karma circumstances, be they with people or circumstances, is connected with a cord. Some shaman comes along, cuts that cord, what do you think is going to happen to that person? They're not going to find their way into resolution in that lifetime, or maybe they're not going to resolve it. They're going to be packing around that residue for a long time, till someone with a wonderful great mind helps that person somewhere along the line, maybe 500,000 years down the road, maybe next year. We hope it's next year. Yes?
So I know many people that have practiced cutting the cords in ceremonies and that.
I do too.
So are there ways that we can help, and actually that's happened in my family, help them?
There is ways to fix it. It's a little more difficult, but there are ways to fix it. It's a much tougher process than if the cords were there. Secondly, cords go to earthbound entities. Earthbound entities are defined as individuals who have left their body in a death experience and are trapped in the lower realms of the spirit world and become earthbound. They don't go into the higher realms. Cords also go to dark entities. Demons. Do you cut those? You can bring it to resolution. But there is an exception to that rule, but I'm not going to give it to you tonight. I can't give you the kind of information that will give you that exception. It's a much more in-depth study. So just recognize that you don't cut them. Get me on the phone. We can do it on the telephone until you learn the process. Earthbound cords go to these fragments of the spirit and soul that's been trapped in tragedy or trauma in some past life, or maybe several past lives. What do you think is going to happen if that cord is cut? There's going to be a portion of this person's nature that they may never find, or that the dark side might get and use in their manifestation in what we're going to talk about just briefly tonight. Cords also go to an area that again is a tough subject, and this is dual existence. Any of you ever heard of that? Someone living in two bodies simultaneously? Does that sound a little bit woo-woo? Did to me too when I first heard it. But the person that told me, the individual that told me about the experience of dual existence was my master teacher, an ascended being who's made his presence known to me physically, as physical as you are. A number of times in this lifetime. I feel very honored and privileged to have had that experience. One day, sitting and talking with him, he told me about people who have these experiences or can live dual lifetimes in two bodies simultaneously, either on this planet or one here and another body on another planet. And if it hadn't have been for who was telling me this, I would have totally just discounted it and went, that's just too much for me to handle. I can't deal with that. But I filed it in the back of my mind. And I kept it there and I didn't deal with it. And I didn't question him on it. I just accepted the information knowing that he knew what he was talking about, because you're talking about an ascended mind who knows what he's doing and knows what he's talking about. Well, about 10 years ago, I had a lady come to me with the following symptoms. She would be, say, doing dishes. And then all of a sudden she would find herself having an entirely different experience, like riding a horse in Kentucky. And that riding that horse would be just as real to her as washing these dishes. Now, how do you think psychiatrists responded to that? Take this, see what this will do. Now that's the classic symptom. There's much more to this, and I can't get too in depth to this tonight. But here's what happened. I saw her for a period of months. And I had ascertained that she was living a dual existence, but I was scared to death to tell her, because I didn't know how she would respond. I hadn't tested her consciousness to determine how she would respond to recognizing that she might be a person living on another planet in a physical body and a physical body living on this planet. And I meditated on that a lot. I'm telling you, I really had to get down to the nitty on this one. And so she came in one day and I had worked up the courage to tell her, and I said, I've assessed what I think this is. And I said, as strange as this may sound to you, I said, I believe that you're living a dual existence. I think you're living here in a physical body, and I think you're living this experience that you've accessed in memory simultaneously. She said, oh, thank God, thank you, thank you. Solved one of the biggest problems she had ever had. And I just went, oh. I thought she was going to get, I had no idea how she was going to respond. But that was more of a healing to her, to hear that, because she too had known that innately for years, but no one had ever voiced it to her. It was quite an incredible experience. So deal gently with that concept, because I'm telling you, as we've all heard, truth is stranger than any fiction you'll ever hear. Really, it's true. That's true. All right. Again, the chords, somebody had their hand back up here and I didn't recognize them. Do we still have the question? Could I get some agua, please? Do we have any? Okay. How are we doing time-wise?
I got lots of time, yeah. Keep talking. We're gonna be like those scientists, we'll just surround you, just stay right there.
All right, let's we'll wind this. I'm supposed to end this at 9 o'clock.
It's 10 after.
Well, we can stretch it. Are we all-
Keep going.
I think so, Kelly, keep us
We're
up.
not in that time-space continuum.
I hope not. All right, let's deal with the subject of spirit attachment. This is a tough subject. As we... Thank you very much. As we deal briefly with the subject, recognize that this has been probably the most disregarded it's been a subject that there's been so much mystery built around it that has caused the greatest fear in people. It's caused the greatest amount of superstitious thinking. How many of you here are afraid of spirits? Are you afraid of the spirit sitting next to you? No. The fact of the matter is that our entire planet has been bereft of telling us what to do, where to go, and in whom to trust when our spirits leave the body at death, physical death. There is no death. No one has ever died. No one will ever die. Period. But what happens in that death experience has been a mystery. And there's been mysteries created around it. People haven't known what to do or where to go and whom to trust. People have been told it's heaven or hell. They've also been taught and conditioned to think that the devil is going to come to them in disguise and fool them. And so an angel of light will come to someone who's lost and say, "Come with me, I'll take you to a safe place." "Oh, you're the devil." And so they stay earthbound around things that they're familiar with. And they will attach to people. They will attach to circumstances. They will attach to properties. My goodness, look at the Gettysburg thing in the States, you know, where people go there as a tourism attraction thing that is so sordid. And still hear the cries and the pain and the suffering that's going on of these soldiers that are still trapped in that experience at Gettysburg. Now, when I'm back there, hopefully I'll get there in this lifetime, I'm going to do what I can to fix that. Because those people are trapped, they're caught. But we have this existent everywhere. I mean, the tragedies, the slaughter of the Indians, for example, in the States. I have a problem, in as much as I like my citizenship. And I love the great country that I live in, as I know you love this great country you live in. You've had a lot of Indians around here. This was Indian territory before the Europeans came in here. Many of those tribes were slaughtered simply to take their land. Well, you don't create a great nation through genocide of the people, the indigenous people that inhabited these lands. So karmically, there's some things that have to be corrected. But a lot of those spirits are still trapped in those experiences. They need help. And many times they will attach to these residues because spirits cannot attach to the cleanliness of your spirit and soul. If you have no residue, you're not a target for attachment. But there are many grades and shades and hues of attaching entities. They can cause everything from a minor influence to a full-on possession to a full-fledged obsession. That's when the personality completely alters and changes. Now, wars have been fought over the concept of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. So how many spirits can take up a single space? What is the space-time continuum anyway? The fact of the matter is that spirits leaving their body have been trained and conditioned to think about heaven or hell. Many of them that I've talked to and have created dialogue with said, well, if this is hell, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. And many of them said, well, if it's heaven, it's sure not what I thought. Well, how boring to think about playing a harp for eternity. I mean, give me a break. Theologically, give me a break. It's nonsense. Spirits have been trapped in circumstances and conditions all down through history. And think of the wars. Read your newspaper every day and think about what's going on in the culture. Here, America, Europe, all over the world. These spirits attach to conditions that are familiar to them. For example, we find people who have head injuries. Someone died of a head injury, their spirit left attached to that injury. But guess what place in our cultures have the greatest potential for infestation of spirit attachment? Hospitals. It's unfortunate that the hospitals won't open doors. There's a friend of mine, a psychiatrist in England now, that's creating a doctor-healer relationship over there. They're trying to get the healers coming into the hospitals. He's actually getting effective. But when I talked to him, I said, how are we going to go through a process of accrediting honorable people that can actually do this work? There are many people that claim to do it, but how many actually do it? In other words, how many get the results? How do we accredit this part of it to invite them into the hospitals? So goodness knows it's needed. And many of the nurses and individuals who become sensitive to this know very well it's needed. There's a lot of help that needs to be put out there in this area of spirit attachment because of the ignorance that has been taught through the concept of what happens to you when you die from religions that know nothing more about the subject than the ones they were attempting to teach. It's unfortunate, but it can be corrected if thinking people, concerned, considerate, kindly people, get past the hoopla out there and get serious and get concerned about what's really impacting and influencing people in a bigger way than you could ever imagine. I can't in just a few moments give you the impact that it's had on me in the many years that I've been doing this. That brings me to the dark side. We all have a dark side. Some of the great personages and some of the great teachers from our past told us, be ye aware that which is the potential of evil within your nature. Be ye aware of that which is the potential of evil in the nature of others. But there is no devil, in my considered humble opinion. There is but one power in this universe, and that's God, however you perceive God to be. That which is evil are devilish beings who misuse knowledge, who misuse power, who misuse energy. And the priesthood needed something to blame mankind's inhumanities to mankind on, so they created a devil. There is none. But there are devilish beings, and there are beings that we call demons. My wife has begged me for years to get a new name for that. She says that name conjures up too much fear in people, you know. I don't know what name to give it. Sometimes I just call it dark entities or dark stuff, you know, call it demons. Spade's a spade, you call it a spade, don't you? Yes, ma'am.
Well, devil simply reversed means to live backwards.
Well, thank you. And yes, it is sort of backwards. But remember, our universe has the yin-yang aspect to it. Okay? As your nature has the yin-yang. And As I have found, I probably have talked to as many demons as anybody on the planet, maybe more, I don't know. That doesn't give me the right to shoulder any authority on the subject, but I believe I understand the subject as well as anybody on the planet. Demons, in their manifestation on this planet, is the best kept secret on the planet. And guess who the guardians to that secret really are? It's the dark side. They've been guarding it. They love denial. They love individuals who deny their existence. And they work through networks very similar to what we would perceive our military to be. In other words, they have their underlings, they have their sergeants, they have their lieutenants and captains and generals. And they attach into individuals in ways that are quite unusual. But what they do, for example, if they attach into anger, and remember there's a lot of anger in our cultures, they are corded to an entire network of dark ones. And these entities, their spirits and souls are made up of the same substance that yours and mine are made up of. They too have the ability to transform and alter and change, as has been demonstrated. And we'll get into that in the workshop this weekend. Not all of them want to, not all of them will agree to. But they have the capacity to transform and change. But in the way that they attach to individuals, let's say they attach to anger, through the corded network that they have, they magnify that anger. They're there to magnify it, to enhance it. Now there's 4 networks that I have found, basically, that they work through. They work through deception, and believe me, the deception has been incredibly clever. They work through disruption, that is to disrupt individuals' lives in ways that just, it still amazes me in all the years I've been doing this. They work through networks of torment. Think about that one. Now, chronic pain is a serious matter in these cultures, and there's chronic pain clinics all over the continent. But chronic pain is one of the easiest things that I've ever had to deal with. I've never had a difficult one. Now, that's not to say that there might not be one out there that's difficult. But we find the tormentors attaching to pain and chronic pain. And then we have the big guys, destruction. These are the ones that enter into the wars and fabricate and create this dissension that's going on in the cultures. Over what? Religious beliefs. All the wars of this planet have been fought in the name of God. Did you know that? All of them. Isn't that insane? What if you were a being from another planet observing these cultures, looking at these people killing each other over what they don't believe or what they do believe? Get a clue. All over religious nonsense. And the demons love it. They flourish in that energy. I don't say these things to you to cause any fear. I say them only to you to hopefully stimulate your thinking, that you might be a more considerate person of yourself and others. When it comes to this most difficult subject, because I'm telling you it is, it's the most difficult subject in our cultures. Let me give you some of the experiences that I've had with demons. There was a lady in Oregon, a grandmother who had a grandchild, 14 years old, who was having seizures daily. They didn't know how to control them. Even the drugs wouldn't work. Who called me? So I got in the car, drove up there. This young girl had been sexually abused by her grandfather since about age 4. When she became a teenager, he began to use Coke bottles and objects and various things that was just horrid. This opens the door. Basically, all sexual abuse opens this door. But even that can be fixed too. That can be brought to a peaceful resolution. And what I found was this big dark entity that was trying to get into the brainstem and get control of her will, because she had been so weakened by this abuse. And of course I have some wonderful friends that I honor every day of my life in the spirit world and in the higher realms of spirit. I have beautiful master teachers that have made their presence known to me that are very willing to do this work. I don't do it. I simply am someone that guides a process and makes the request when I find it and identify it. They take care of it. But you have to be able to identify it, and you have to be intelligent in your identification of it. Once that was removed, the seizures stopped, because the seizures were caused as a result of her spirit trying to resist this entity taking control of her will through the brainstem. She's now in her 2nd year of college and living a comfortable, good life, and I'm happy for her. Damn demons. Don't fear these entities. Here's the one thing that you can do to protect yourself. Create light with your own mind. Become an emissary of light on this planet. Use that light energy every day. Strengthen your aura. Strengthen the energy within you. Love yourself. Learn to truly love and respect yourself for who you are. And if there's any part of your nature that you can't learn to love and respect, then change it until you can. Because the one thing that renders these entities helpless is love and light. They can't function in that energy. It renders them totally helpless. I've had individuals come up to me who know I do this work and say, how come you're not totally infested and have all these entities hanging on you? They're not comfortable around me. And I can't tell you the secret to it, but I use a lot of light color energy on a daily basis. I try to do my homework and paying attention to the energies that I know I'm being influenced and affected by. And I try to create that energy from the center of my being, build that energy, white light, violet flame, these various energies that are protective energies, and give them the intelligence to be protective of my spirit and my soul. And I affirm that every day of my life. And I'm cognizant of that when I'm called to approach dealing with an entity that is attached to a young boy or a young girl or whatever. I'll tell you one cute story. It's a true story. A lady was in one of the metaphysical bookshops in Sacramento. Her little boy was 5 years old. And he had been telling her for 2 years that there was a man in his bedroom who had an arrow sticking out of him. Now, he started telling her that when he was 3, and she just went, oh, okay, you know, just, it's your imagination or something, you know, Johnny's little imagination. But he would not go in the room, he would not sleep in there. He had been sleeping with her for 2 years. He would not play in that room. That room was vacated, period. That child would not enter that room. So finally at 5, she finally gets the clue, and so she's in the store and she's telling somebody about this, her son, and somebody who knew me overheard it, who was actually the manager of the store. And he just walked over and handed her a card and said, why don't you call this guy? I think he can help you. Well, she called me, and I agreed to come over and obviously see what I could do to help the little guy. Well, when I got there, they had invited the whole family. I mean, this looked like it was going to be a show time, you know. I mean, the whole living room was filled with the entire family because they was wanting to see what this exorcist was going to do with this entity that this little boy had seen back in the bedroom. And I simply took the little boy back in the bedroom, set him down on the bed next to me, and I said, do you see somebody in here? And he says, yeah, I see this man over there's got an arrow in him. And I said, well, does he scare you? And he says, yeah, he scares me. I said, does he attempt to scare you? He says, no, he just scares me. And I said, well, I think he's just lost. I think we need to get him some help. Have you ever met an angel? He said, no. And I said, well, I'm going to ask an angel to come in and help him. And you let me know if you see this angel. He says, yeah, I see her right there, right now. You know, he had his head down, he'd point over, and he'd look up. And I said, well, I think this man is not trying to scare you. I think he's just lost. He doesn't know where to go, and he's not really trying to frighten you. Why don't you ask him to take that arrow out of him? He doesn't need it there anymore. He said, okay, take the arrow out. And then he looked up, you know, and actually he'd pulled his arrow out. And I said, let's ask that angel to take him home, take him to God. Would you ask the angel to do that? And he said, okay, take him now. Well, I called a couple of days later, and the little boy wouldn't come out of the room. I mean, he'd been playing in there, he's been sleeping in there, and I checked a few months later, and he's the same thing. So these are the kind of things that actually impact children, adults, everyone. Remember, children are basically clairvoyant anyway. And they shut it off once they get conditioned to our culture and the ways of the world. But think of the life of that little boy and the experience that he would have had that not have happened. I mean, what a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And I think the angel work, because again, I didn't do it. The angels did it. It simply had to be identified. And was identified through that little boy, not me. Yes?
I know someone is going through something similar right now, but if they ask them to leave, don't they have to leave?
No. Nope. They're scared. You can ask all you want, but sometimes it requires an education, that you must educate them. I've actually regressed some spirits who are attached to people back to the point of their physical passing, and did therapy with them, and then released them so that they can get a relationship to where they're at and the experience that they left in the physical body. Because many of them don't realize they're dead. They don't understand it.
Are you doing any private consultations while you're here then?
Yeah, I am, but I think I'm solid, but yes.
I have a question. I was thinking about it in respect to psychedelic drugs, and we've had them around for about 40 years now, and they've opened a lot of doors, I think, positive. But I'm wondering about the negative. How do they attach to us through use and through so many young people still using them again?
Well, again, psychedelic drugs, are you talking about LSD?
And ecstasy and
Mhm.
some of the other, there's lots of them out there now
Mhm.
again.
The LSD or psychedelic drugs, LSD especially, will throw the chakras wide open. It's not a natural process that is going on there. And many of the individuals, for example, who did a lot of LSD experiments and experiences in the 60s, who are having flashbacks as a result of the synthetic chemicals that are used in the manufacture of LSD. Your system can't reheat those substances to break it down to pass it out, so they're stored in the body. If the chemistry comes back around to a certain point, it reawakens the LSD that's in there, and they have the flashback or they have the experience. I say absolutely no to psychedelic or chemical psychedelic experiences and experiments with those drugs. I would encourage your children, educate everyone you can about them. But the other side of the coin is this. I advocate the legalization of all drugs. It's kind of silent.
Why?
Because it takes out the criminal activity. People, you take marijuana for example, no one's ever died of an overdose. I mean, people who OD on marijuana simply go to sleep. Good night. No one's ever died. For some people, marijuana would be an excellent remedy if it were used intelligently. I had a medical doctor come to me a number of years ago. He had spent $90,000 on cocaine that year. Lost his practice, lost his family. Now, he was of the status that he didn't want to come in my front door, so I'd have to let him in the back door so no one could see him coming to someone like me. I got him off his cocaine, but I had him using marijuana in the evening after he finished work. And we broke it. But there's much more to it. And we got his family back and we got his practice back. But until such time that these substances are treated legitimately and legalized, they're illegal. Tell your children, tell people, hands off. It's not good. You know, you don't want to be confronted with law enforcement agencies on these matters. But encourage intelligence in the area of the laws that are making criminals out of people that are only putting a substance in their body that puts them to sleep if they take too much. I mean, think of aspirin. You could die taking too many aspirin. Look at the horror stories in the PDR about all the drugs and people that have died from drugs that are available out there and the stuff you can buy off the counters. So I say let's get really common sensed about this whole thing and use intelligence and recognize what is good. But I think to take the criminal thing out of it is to legalize it all and put it under the control of the law. Legalize it. Then people won't be robbed for someone trying to get money to go buy drugs. If they want a shot of heroin, let them go down to the local pharmacy, write their name and address down. If they don't have any money, give it to them. Let them go ahead and space out. Don't make criminals out of them. Penitentiaries are filled with people. No victim in their crime. They're simply because they put a little substance in their body. That's wrong. And we pay for it through taxes. All right, any other questions? Yes?
Someone with entities that leave before you do work with them, how do you convince the entity to stay?
Don't. If they leave, you don't worry about it. But what you want to do is you want to remove the residue they were attached to. That way it prevents re-entry. Because it's a twofold process. Removing the entity is one thing. Removing the residue they were attached to is the second process and the most important part of the process. Remembering then that spirits that are attached to people or to circumstances are equally important to you and me. Their spirit is just as important as you and I. And they have to be cared for. Doesn't matter what their belief system is or what they've done. They need help. And intelligent people and kindly, good, loving people can give them help. All they need to do is know how to work through the process of being able to identify it, because identifying it is the key. It's like identifying it through this little 5-year-old boy. Huh. Look what happened. It's quite amazing. Any other questions? Okay, we've gone a little bit over time. That's okay, isn't it? I'm really honored to be invited here and to be able to talk to you about these matters. Some of them are tough matters. Help those of you who have not made reservation for the 3-day weekend will do so. I certainly would like to see your beautiful smiles and loving faces over the next 3 days. We'll go much more in depth into these matters. And hopefully some of you have had some degree of training or who do healing work can get enough from it where you can do portions of it. I don't encourage everyone to become an exorcist or to work with entities and so forth. I simply encourage people to become cognizant of the potential of this so that at least they can point somebody in the right direction to get help. And not to some allopathic doctor that's simply going to drug them and keep them repressed and keep those symptoms repressed. There's a lot of matters that need to be explored, in my humble opinion, but it's certainly going to take time, and I do hope that someday I can come back and maybe see the same faces here, and we can continue this little journey and explore further these subjects that certainly have been of interest to me for many, many years, and I hope to you. And I hope some of what I've said tonight has been interesting. I hope it's been helpful to you. And I wish you all a good life. Let's close this meeting with the great invocation. If you would repeat after me, please. From the point of light within the mind of God. I'll say it once and then you repeat it with me. How's that? From the point of light within the mind of God. From the point of light within the mind of God. Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God. From the point of love within the heart of God. Let love stream forth into the hearts of men. Let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, from the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men. Let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. The purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out. Let the plan of love and light work out. And may it seal the door where evil dwells. And may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. God bless. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for honoring me.